Mads, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Alan. It is a pleasure to be here, and I'm super excited about our chat today.
Likewise, likewise. So, before we get into it, right? So, I did some research, Mads, and I was looking at one of your previous workshops, and one line jumped out to me. So, and I don't know if you recall this, this could have been from a few years ago, but you had said this, right? Most of the business owners I've talked to, their main problem is they can't replicate themselves, right? So with that, how do they do that? And why is this important to replicate themselves?
So the quote itself is most business owners are struggling trying to replicate themselves. Actually, my opinion is you shouldn't. So the whole thing from a high level standpoint, organizations exist for the specialization of labor, right? The thing is, when you have an agency owner, they're often like, oh, if I had someone just like me, we could do a lot more. And they try and replicate themselves and they fail. Now, the whole point is you shouldn't. The whole point is an organization is about breaking things down. Right. So the whole point is that you don't want a company that have 10 people who can all do all the stuff. Then you might as well have 10 freelancers. Right. The whole point of an organization is to specialize people so they get significantly better at individual parts of a job. So I'll give you as an example. If I'm the CEO of an agency, I'm not going to be equally good at delivering whatever service they're delivering, doing marketing and doing sales. I'm going to have something I'm better at. Now, as a CEO, I should not be doing the things that I'm not good at, right? Now, the same thing with staff, right? In a company, if you have a marketing team, you want them to do marketing, but you want them to do the things that they're good at. And you want to hire people who are very good at doing specific things. And obviously you have processes and you have stuff in your company that's very valuable. And what that does fundamentally is that instead of having someone, skill set wise equal to you that knows like a whole pile of stuff, you break that down and you have people who are much better at individual skills. Because here's what happens. Let's say you have a marketing team, right? If they all know 27 things about 50 things, they're not going to be that great at some of it. But if I was to hire you and I give you a job and your only job for the next 3 years is going to be cold email, and you spend all day, every day trying to figure out how to tweak the script, how to improve deliverability, how to just win at cold email, you are going to be way better at cold email than someone who is spending an hour a week on cold email and doing 17 other different things, right? So fundamentally, organizations exist for specialization of labor. And that is absolutely key when you're running a company. Yes, in the beginning, when you have a couple of staff members, a lot of people do a lot of things. As an owner, as a business owner, your goal is to get out of your own way, right? If you disappear for a month and your company crashes, you ain't got a company, right? So your focus should be, how can you put people in place? And second step, every entrepreneur are where they are because at some point someone trusted them. So at some point someone said, Alan, you're a great dude. I don't have the time to look at cold email. I don't have the time to look at social media. Can you just go figure it out? So at some point someone trusted them. And that's why they are where they are right now. However, they're not giving that honor to their staff. They're holding back the growth and development of their staff by consistently micromanaging and by sitting on top of them, right? People learn and people grow when they're given an area of responsibility and they get to figure out how to do it. I love with SEOs, right? SEOs, they complain all day, every day about clients that are telling them how to do their job, right? And they're doing the exact same thing to their staff. They're literally telling their staff how to do their job. It is the most annoying thing in the world, right?
Yeah.
You either hire people, you trust them, you give them some ownership, and you let them figure shit out, or you don't.
How does it? So you talk about, I guess, essentially breaking things up, right? How does a business owner start that process, right? I have some preconceived notions on this because I've seen it done in different ways, and generally what I've seen is when business owners start to hire, it's usually they're hiring from a place of stress, frustration, and burnout. So, and I'm sure you deal with this all the time, Mads, when you're dealing with that business owner who's wearing multiple hats,
Yeah.
right? What is the advice you tell them to essentially start like stepping back and hiring? Because there's a few different key functions in the business. You have your sales, marketing, people, there's all these things. Where should they be looking to get help first?
I'll start telling you first what people do. So what people do is they're looking at the very easy, very simple stuff, and they go and hire a VA for $5 an hour, and then they give a little bit of stuff to them. That saves them a little bit of time. So they save some hours. They still have to manage this person, and they still have to train them, but it saves them a little bit of time. The right place to start is look at what are the big chunks of work in this business. Right? Now, all companies, sales, marketing, operation, finance, maybe tech, but 4 to 5 organizations, right? When I hire my first person, I think a lot about, okay, we're a small company. Where do I need power? Do I need a salesperson? Do I need a marketing person? Or do I need operations done with? Now, there's two ways to, there's many ways to look at this, but the two ways I tend to look at it is, what am I good at? Because everything else being equal, while I am still doing things, it is better being things that I am good at, right? Now, the second aspect is looking at it from a time perspective. Where's my time going? So let's say I'm a good SEO. I love doing SEO. I started my little agency, and that's my strength. However, sales and marketing, I'm not so good at. Now, the problem is, if you have a very small agency, if you're not good at sales and marketing, you probably don't have a good eye on your ICP. You probably don't. There's probably a lot of stuff missing, right? The problem is, in this case, you can go hire a marketing person. But the problem is you have no marketing right now. You have no systems, you have no target audience, you have no anything. And most likely you're selling everything to everyone. It's like anyone says something with SEO, you're like, yeah, that's me, right? So no systems, no processes, no good deliverability, etc. Now, in this case, it often makes the most sense to hire an SEO to do the delivery, because your business haven't been figured out yet. And everything else being equal, as the owner, you gotta figure out your business first. And what do I mean with figure out your business? Your business, a company, is what are we selling and who are we selling it to, right? If you hire marketing staff before you've figured out what you're selling and who you're selling it to, they will most likely not be able to help you significantly. They will start doing some social, they can start doing some weird stuff, but it's not something that's gonna hit your bottom line, right? Now, if you have already found out what exactly are you selling, what's your clear offer, what's your ICP, so who's your ideal customers, that generally makes it way easier to potentially go and hire either a marketing company, a marketing individual, or potentially a salesperson. But again, what I tell most people is, in the early days, try and figure out something that works yourself. So again, if you're doing SEO, if you're delivering SEO, if you have a system that works, it makes it way better to delegate that, right? Very few people, and I'm not saying there's no one, but very few people can walk into a company and build it for their own, right? And a lot of the time, if you're hiring someone to try and go in and set up your sales and marketing in the early days, you're fundamentally trying to get someone to build your company.
And I know exactly what you're speaking about there, because I was in that position in a previous company, and what it actually turned into, we didn't have any of the fundamentals. It's when you break it down the way you've broken it down, like, what are you selling and who are you selling it to? You would think that every business can give you that answer like that. The reality is most can't, particularly in the early stage.
Yeah.
And what I find interesting about your answer, Mads, is essentially you're basically suggesting that there actually needs to be certain conditions in place to assess before, let's say, you start scaling or you start hiring people. And what I find interesting as well, because typically around this topic, what I mostly hear is like, okay, if you want to, let's say, get yourself out of the position and start scaling, you do a time audit. And then from the time audit, then you look to figure out where your time is going and then how to delegate based off that. However, the way you framed it is you've actually given another route where it's more, I actually think it's more empowering to the CEO as well, to really actually take stock on what am I good at, what am I not good at. And as you were explaining it, the thing that came to my mind was, Michael Gerber's book, The 𝐸-Myth.
Yeah.
And the difference between working on and working in your business.
Yeah.
So
yeah, what I would say is that for many people, right, they start a business because they're passionate about something. So let's take a different scenario. Let's say you start a company, you're a sales and marketing guy, right? That's the stuff you like. So when you start a company, what you're struggling with the most is probably operations and delivery, right? I'm very confident being a sales guy. If you go on a sales call, you know what you're doing. That ain't your problem, right? Now, the thing is, you are in a small company, you're still the expert. So you're still the one who really have to figure out the deliverables, really need to nail them down and so on. So if you already have a solid sales process, if you already have a solid marketing process, you might be better delegating that initially while you're figuring out what are we actually delivering, how are we delivering it, and who are we delivering it to, right? So, because again, if you hire someone to go do operations, go and do fulfillment in a business like yours, you would either need to get someone like you, but they might not deliver what you actually want to be delivered.
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up as an example, actually, because they were thoughts that I was ruminating about previously. And I'm curious, from your experience, Mads, like when you're dealing with founders, when you're dealing with CEOs, have you come across many, let's say, would you call them a full stack person that can actually execute on everything? Or do you really see it as a case of basically rule of thumb, someone's good at sales, then their blind spot is going to be, let's say, delivery. Someone's good at operations, maybe they're terrible at sales.
We all have certain strengths and weaknesses, right? Like you're spending more time in one area than another. Is there some people who are really balanced? Yes. And here's the thing, I feel sorry for them, because the problem with being able to do it all is, one, you often do it all. And what that means is that your business grows really, really slowly, right? Like if you ever find find yourself in this situation, you look around, you look at other people who have been in business as long as you have, making way more money, doing way better, and you're like, well, I'm smarter than this guy. or this girl. And I'm like, yeah, you are, and that's the problem, right? That there's two fundamental things. When you look at the world population, half the world population is very good at doing, and half the world population is very good at thinking about. Now, what that means is that some people thrive through action, and some people thrive to perfection, right? Or some people thrive to figuring out the ideal way to do everything, right? And the thing is, those personality traits, they're good in different circumstances.
Yeah.
But one of them all the time often doesn't work all the time, right? So the whole point of surrounding yourself with other people, and here's the thing, I love the concept in business about having an integrator and having a visionary. That makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
And from a company structure standpoint, it doesn't make a lot of sense. And what I mean with that is that when you look at 99% of businesses on a planet, they're structured the same way. CEO, sales, marketing, operation, finance. Right? Now, in principle, the CEO in a setup like that is the visionary. In principle.
Mm-hmm.
And they're visionary stuff to their team to go and execute and deliver. Right? Reality is, when you look at most of the best, the most successful CEOs, they are often more on the integrator spectrum. They need to have a bit of both, because a CEO with zero vision is probably not going to win unless it's a very simple business model. But integration is often important. Now, what I mean with integration is not always doing all the things and getting everything done all the time. Because in my book, you don't want to end up like someone like 𝐭𝐡𝐢𝐬𝐤, who works 16 hours a day, all day, every day. Like, I don't. That's not why I'm in business. So the whole thing is that you need to surround yourself with the right people, where you can get to know your own strengths and weaknesses. You can figure out who you are. You can figure out your strength, and you understand your weaknesses. And the way I work with that, right? Like, if you would take the sort of visionary / integrator, I'm probably 80-20 visionary. So I have a lot of stupid ideas, and I sometimes implement a little bit, but I'm definitely more visionary. But my focus in every company is, when I'm looking at the people in the different departments, I look at, what is my strength? Okay, I know I suck at marketing. So I know in marketing, I need someone who is both visionary enough to come up with a plan and an executor enough to actually execute it. If I have someone who can only execute, or if I have someone who can only think great thoughts, I'm probably not going to win.
And from your, so that it's interesting you bring up the marketing example, because that particular example is where I hear, see, and have experienced the most challenges trying to recruit that type of profile you've just described. From my experience, I've generally seen, in terms of marketing, one, they're either good at executing, but they're not able to come up with the vision and the plan and the strategy to actually get results. Or you'll find someone who's amazing with strategy and planning, but then can't execute. So my question to you is, one, are those people out there? And then two, because I think a lot of people will get value from this, if they are out there, how do you either get or attract them? Because in my career to date as well, I have found that type of profile to be few and far between. And I know that's not just a personal anecdote. I don't know if you've ever read The Effective Executive by Peter Drucker.
Yeah.
And he basically he touches on something similar, where he he kind of says generally there's two camps of people. There's camp A, where people are like really good at the strategy and the planning, or camp B, or else actually maybe I got this from Chet Holmes, the Ultimate Sales Machine. Actually, I think it was from Chet Holmes. He said it's either they're great at thinking or they're great at doing. It's a very small percentage that can do both.
Yeah, so the way I turn it around is that actually the role of marketing is not thinking versus doing. So thinking versus doing is different than execution and planning. So you have been lucky enough to been through some of my management training. So from a personality standpoint, I swear to DISC. And from a DISC standpoint, when you want to find those marketing people, you look for dominant people. Because dominant people in general they're good at getting shit done. They're logical. But as long as the company have a vision, so as long as the CEO have a vision, they can often put a marketing plan together around that vision, right?
So then, so that's the planning part. Then, in terms of the execution,
they can plan and execute. So dominant people have the benefit of wanting to get shit done and wanting to deliver results, right? They're not always the most creative, but the thing is they're the most tenacious. They'll keep hammering their head into a wall until they get results. So when they put together a plan, even if the plan doesn't actually work, they'll keep doing stuff to figure it out, right? So dominant, like when I look at my marketing teams across my businesses, particularly because I suck at marketing, it is generally, unless they're SEO specific marketing leaders, they are generally dominant.
So as well as the number of businesses you run, Mads, one of them is obviously a recruiting company, right? So if someone's watching this, and I'm assuming most founders have the thought of like, look, I suck at marketing, right? I just want to get someone to do the marketing for me. If they have that thought and then they decide, okay, we need to go and get a good marketing person, how do they, or what would you suggest that they do to vet someone who would actually be the profile you described? Because as I said before, and look, I'm more on the sales side than the marketing, but I've been in that, I've been on the other side of the table where I've been in companies where we're interviewing marketing people. And from my experience, some of them sound amazing. Like the plans, the strategy, you're like, that's the person. And then when we get to the job, the execution isn't there. So I'm curious, do you have any tactics, strategies to try to figure out, are they the right profile to execute based on what you've said?
So the first step, I'll say there's two steps here. So when interviewing any candidates, my first train of thought is always the same. Show me you have done it before. Show me the example, right? Show me you put together a plan. Show me what it looks like, right? Like explain to me, what is the marketing plan you put together? Why did you do what you did? And then show me how you execute it, right? So the first step for me is actually looking and making sure people have done it before. Because again, if they've never done it, it doesn't mean they couldn't. It means they don't know what they're doing, and it will take significantly longer to figure out. So first step is always show me you've done it. So if they've done it for another company, again, they might be weaker in either putting together the plan or the execution. They might, but that's a starting point, right? So that's a strong interview question or interview interrogation, if you will. The second step, use HeyRamp.com, and just sign up for free. Give them a DISC test and make sure that the individuals you're interviewing, if you are in the role, if you are in a situation where you know nothing about marketing or very little, look for people who are dominant, right? So there's different people that are good at different things in marketing. So sometimes in some companies, particularly with a bigger marketing department, you might want different types of people, right? So in some organization, you want people who are crazy creative, can come up with the wildest idea for videos and stuff like that. In some organizations, if you're like 100%, or not 100%, but if you're majorly relying on SEO, you might want a different type of person because SEO caters to a different type of personality. Yeah, so it depends a little bit, right? But generally for small founders that have a team of less than 5, if you are hiring a marketing person, you're looking for someone who can both come up with ideas and who can do some serious execution. Now, this doesn't mean it works from day one, right? Like the problem is if you have no marketing process, if you have nothing that you've tested that works, this does not mean that someone is going to walk in, put in something on the table, and it'll work from day one, right? Like a lot of the time, particularly when there's no tested processes, you need to test out stuff to see what works, right? Like I've seen companies who test out ads and they realize that it's the way targeting works. They can't figure out how to hit their ideal audience. It ends up sometimes hitting their customers instead, or if their customers are looking at it. Like for one example, as a recruitment company, a lot of the time when we're doing ads, the people who click on them is people who are looking for jobs. Now, you know, some PPC channels might work for that, some won't. But the whole point is that sometimes there's stuff you haven't thought of, and when you start cold email, if you start any kind of outreach, if you start ads, or if you start SEO, like everything doesn't always work all the time, and not always from day one.
Agreed. Right. So let's step back for a second. So let's say we're the agency owner. We're after figuring out our strengths, our weaknesses, and let's say we've realized, okay, I'm spending a lot of my time doing the delivery, but I can't keep doing that because there's a constraint in the business. We won't be able to scale. So I'm going to get out of delivery. I'm going to hire someone to do that delivery, right? What then, let's say, are the next steps? So let's say we've got deliveries working, we've got the right person. If we're thinking about working on the business, then there's a question of, are we thinking sales? Are we thinking marketing? Typically, from your experience of working with a lot of agency owners, I think I saw on your website, you've worked with like something crazy, like 700 businesses. What are the patterns you see of, like, let's say first the patterns, and would you say, is there a formula of, like, if you're dealing with an agency owner, he's like, Mads, this is our situation. We're probably doing 6 figures a year. I want to get to 7 figures fast. What's the path? How do we do it?
So again, I tend to look at a little bit of strength, right? Now, reality is if you're running an agency, there's exceptions, but in most cases, that's sort of higher value, lower quantity of leads, right? Now, if you're another boat, if you have hundreds of leads every month, you might want to figure out your sales process and put a salesperson in place. But if your quantity of leads is relatively low, like many of the agencies I work with, they get maybe 5 or 10 leads or something a month. At that point, in my experience, it's often better the founder is still doing those calls.
Yeah.
Right? And there's no harm in spending a little bit of time learning a bit about sales and actually getting a little bit better at it, because that makes you better. But really what you want to figure out at that point is you want to look at your marketing, and you want to look at what are the options, what is the vision of your company, who are the people you're targeting, and then say, okay, where are those people? Where does it make sense to hit them? What are things other agencies like mine succeed with, right? And again, most people say, what's the right thing to do? That's not a right thing. Sometimes hiring an agency is the best thing to do. Sometimes hiring individuals is the best thing to do. And sometimes you can learn a bunch from either. Again, if you have never run ads, you go out and hire an ads agency, they are not going to make you money in the first couple of months. They're not. Like, unless you have some magician-ish angle of how to do something at an extremely good cost or whatever. But like, it takes time. right? Things takes time. The same, if you're setting up cold email, like it takes a month to warm up email addresses, right? So it's like things takes time and things takes adjustment. But you testing out things, because the benefit with you being the owner testing things is that you know the business, right? And you actually getting, let's say you're sending out cold emails, right? And you're looking at what a customer's saying. You might be like, oh, that's what they're looking for. Maybe there's something you can tweak in your offer. Or maybe you're hitting a bunch of people who are not your ideal customers, and that's totally okay. But sometimes as an agency owner, you have a little bit more understanding or thought about, okay, what does this mean to the business model and so on. So again, depending on the finances, if you have plenty of money, you can obviously go out and hire some great people straight away. But most people in that situation often don't. So trying to figure out a channel, and what I tell everybody, all the gurus always say, be everywhere, right? Here's the thing. If you run an agency, you can't be doing emails and social and PPC and YouTube and it's very difficult, right? My philosophy is the total opposite. Pick one thing and just keep going at it till you make it work.
I love that. Have you heard of the concept, or well, what you described there is making me think of the 5-1 model. I don't know if you've heard of this before. It's from the founder of Lead Pages. His name was Clay Collins, and it's been repopularized through 𝐭𝐡𝐢𝐬𝐬𝐲, and basically he talks about the path to get to 1 million fast. And essentially, this model is to help, and I use this with the agencies we work with, to get clarity on the key fundamentals on the business. So basically, as you described, it's one ICP, one channel, one lead generation strategy, one conversion mechanism, and then 1 year, right? Sounds very straightforward, but as you know yourself, we're in a world where it's very easy to get distracted, and you see the new tactic, you see the new strategy on YouTube, and you're like, that's it. That's it for a business to scale. One other thing that you touched on, Mads, that I found interesting, because I really hear 2 lines of thinking with this, right? Systems first or people's first. Can you speak to that a bit more? Because I've heard arguments for either camp. People first, if you have money, that's what I've heard, or systems first to essentially mitigate risk. What's your take?
There isn't a right or wrong. Again, you either have more time or more money, right? Most founders have one or the other, more readily available, right? And whatever one it is, I mean, yeah, if you want to do a cold email and you can go out and hire someone who's a guru at it from day one, it might help you. Now, understand, just because someone is a guru at ads or a cold email doesn't necessarily know they fully understand the ins and outs of your business from day one, right? So it does still make sense to be a little involved in the early stages when you're hiring someone like that, right? Because again, your goal is to make a channel work, right? So if you go out, if I go out, I mean, I've done it multiple times, go out and find a company that's expert at cold outreach or whatever. You want to work with them as closely as you can, collaborate as much as you can with them to really help give them the best chance of success. But there's very few, any agencies, email, ads, SEO, anything that just walk into a company, says, yep, we'll sort it out, don't worry, and then just deliver your results. Like, it's usually a collaborative process because you know your business. And if you still haven't figured out your ICP, if you still haven't figured out exactly what you're selling, that makes this way harder. If you're doing SEO for e-commerce businesses and agencies and 7 other different types, right? You're already making it so difficult for yourself to succeed, right? So successful businesses generally do one thing exceptionally well, a repeatable process over and over and over and over again.
So true. And from my experience working with clients, the clients, our agencies who get the best results are the ones that are most collaborative.
Yeah.
And that's why within my business over time, we've shifted our model in terms of how we help. Because previously when I first started, I was basically doing it all for them. And the challenge with that is there's no autonomy on their side. So then when we're having the review calls, it's okay, how do I do this? No, we tried it, it's not working. And so there's a big gap, right? So you've touched on something fundamental there. And I'd be surprised as well in the market, maybe you're seeing this as well, if more businesses don't move to that type of model. Moving on, right? Let's say, okay, we've got our fundamentals in our place, we've got fulfillment covered, let's say we have a great marketing person, right? So everything looks like we're ticking all the boxes. And this is where maybe agency owners start getting very excited and they're like, okay, let's invest more, let's invest more. What are the biggest mistakes you see when agency owners get to that stage and they kind of want this explosive growth? Because for me, when I've spoken with agency owners before, let's say they're doing 1 mil, 2 mil, 3 mil a year, and they're like, Alan, can you help us get to 10 million next year?
And your answer is obviously yes.
Well, luckily in my business, we have a process for that. We'll say, firstly, can we validate that? And so we'll do an audit. But for me, usually it's a bit of a red flag.
So you're not going to help one of my companies go to 10 mil next year?
Well, what I tend to say to them is, look, I love ambition and I'm ambitious. If we can figure out a way to get you to 10 million, we'll do it. But first, let's do an audit. And so that's how I approach it. And actually, when they do have that goal, basically I'll do a financial model for them in terms of like what needs to happen for us to get there. But then what starts to change in their mind is they realize the cost that's actually associated with that.
Yeah, it's up in multiple things, right? So one of the things I love about ambitious goals, and I talk a lot about this in my management training, is that when you have very ambitious goals, what you want to do is you generally want to think back from the end result. So you want to say, okay, we're in Feb now, we're doing 1 million this month. If by the end of the year, I'll want to be doing 10 mil, I need to do things very differently. So what I like to do is I like to take a step back, and for this to succeed, what are the things that needs to change? And actually analyze the whole business and say, okay, cash flow. You know, how would cash flow need to work to get us to that point? Do we get paid fast enough? Do we get paid up front? Or do we get paid, you know, after we have done a bunch of work, which means it's going to be very difficult to scale at that rate without getting cash flow problems. Cash flow. Then it's operations, saying, okay, we have to deliver 10x what we are delivering right now. Is that feasible? Number two, what will it cost? So let's say I'm doing something like you're doing, sales training. If I have 5 sales trainers today making 1 million, if I need to scale to 10 million, I might need significantly more sales trainers. I need to get them trained. I need to get them activated. I need to do other things for them. Is that realistic? Yes, no. Can the systems and the tools you're using handle that? A lot of the time, people bump into these issues where they're like, oh, shit, you know, our CRM explodes when we get any more new clients. But because they hadn't sat down in front and thought the whole, you know, the whole end-to-end process through, they often don't think about those things. So looking then again at operations, saying, okay, well, you know, we need to deliver 10x more. What is that going to cost, right? And here's the thing, we might need to start hiring more staff in January that might not pay for themselves for months because they need to get trained first, they need to get up to speed and so on. So you might need to preemptively hire to be able to scale, right? Then you look at marketing, you say, okay, marketing, we need to 10x our leads. One, how are we going to do it? What is the possible ways for us to do this successfully? What are the channels that we have tested that we believe are scalable, and what does that cost? And then two, what is the likelihood that we're going to be able to scale 10x? Because sometimes you can scale a little, but you can't always 10x. And then the last one is sales, right? Saying, okay, what would it take? Well, we can either sell a lot more to the same people, or if we have to sell the same product but to many more people, then we need additional salespeople. What are the things that needs to be in place? Again, what is the cost? And you're right, for many companies, when you look at the cost of scaling operations, scaling marketing, scaling sales, certainly it's not impossible to get to 10 million, but it might cost a lot of money to get there. And it might put a lot of stuff at risk, because the challenge you have when you're scaling quickly is that you often need to hire beforehand. Because when the leads are there, when the work is there, it's too late.
And then things start to break.
Yeah.
For people who are reviewing this, so I went to one of Mads' management training a couple of years ago, and that question that you mapped out of what will this cost, that was something that was transformative in my thinking. Now, as you were explaining that, right, I'm sure people are listening to this and they're thinking, oh yeah, that all sounds straightforward. But realistically, most business owners, one, they don't give themselves the time to think strategically, or to give themselves the space and time to actually really forecast the way you've just done like that. What would you suggest to those agency owners to make sure that they can actually execute based off the questions you just mapped out there? Is it a case of getting a business coach, management coach to make sure that they actually follow that type of structure? Oh, you're muted, Mads.
No, sorry. Yeah, I was saying there's not a right or wrong way to do it. Again, finding people who have already done it, they can probably help you with some shortcuts, right? My personal belief is I try and find people who are great for the specific things. So hiring like a generic business coach, I often wouldn't do. I would often look at specifically what are we doing and how can I find someone who is really good and have done this before or helped other companies do this. But I would look at specific processes. So I would look at, for example, you could look at operation and you could say, okay, how can we automate things? You could look at marketing and say, okay, how do I find someone who is a great coach at, I don't know, paid ads, or a great coach at SEO, or a great coach at social media, right? Or sales. How can you find a great sales coach? Because the benefit, and honestly, this is why I've niched down into people management, right? Because I mean, I know a lot of stuff about a lot of stuff. That's reality. But again, you want to have a very clear ICP of who it is you're helping and supporting. And my love and where I see most people struggle to scale is because they don't manage people the right way, right? So I'm a big believer in finding a coach that is exceptional at this specific area. So, for example, if I want to do YouTube, I'm not going to go and hire a generic marketing coach. I'm going to go and hire someone who is a YouTube expert. Just like if I'm not going to hire a life coach to help me go to the gym, right? I'll go find a personal trainer who can help me get better in the gym. So I think generally, again, this is a resource question, right? Generally, if you want to grow fast, you need more expertise. So you need to invest in better staff. You often benefit a lot from investing in coaching or consulting, or sometimes you can be lucky to find a mentor who is happy to help you, who have gone through some of the same things, right? But you definitely want to, you increase the likelihood and you increase the speed of success by working with people who have already done it, right? Can you do it on your own? 100%. Is it going to take longer? 99.9% sure.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, and maybe this is for the ambitious agency owners, if speed is important to them, if they want to move fast, then they need to get out of their own head and invest in their own development.
Yeah, but I mean, a lot of agency owners, they ask me the specific question. They say, hey, but I really like making sure every little tiny thing is being done correctly. I don't just want to hire someone to do it. I'm like, okay, that's great, then do that. But you understand that it is, you're picking your comfort over a much more successful business, right? So you need to understand what is your goal. If your goal is just to do something you enjoy doing, don't want to touch the areas that you're uncomfortable with, you can do that. Now, you might not be very successful. Now, if you want to run a business, that's very different, right? A business is about prioritizing the resources that you have available. But when a business makes money, right, a lot of time people don't think about it like this. But when as a company, let's say you finish the year, you have 100,000 sitting in the bank. Right? A lot of people's like, okay, that's great. Let's do some more. Well, the real question is, you have resources. What are you doing with them, right? And if you, like, most people look at cheap instead of looking at the #1 business metric, which is return on investment, right? Like, I run an outsourcing company. We have so many people who come to us and like, okay, what's the cheapest I can hire someone? And I'm like, that's not what you're after in most cases. When you're hiring people, it doesn't matter what it costs. What matters is the return. If I can hire someone for $1,000 a month that makes me 10 grand a month, that's great. If I can hire someone for 10 grand a month that makes me $1 million a month, that is way better, right? So, again, like running an outsourcing company, people think, oh, you're saying we shouldn't hire cheap. I'm saying, so we hire mostly in South Africa. And the whole point is that I can hire a top 10% in South Africa in marketing, for example, for, I don't know, 5 grand a month, right? Like a top 10% for 5 grand a month. Now, in the UK or in the US, 5 grand a month would give me someone with a year's experience, right? My point is that very often, most people misunderstand outsourcing to just be focused on cheap. Whereas for me, the question is, what is the best you can get for the most relative value, right? So where can you go and hire great people at an affordable rate to give you amazing results? So with developers, for example, like for many years, we always used to hire out of Eastern Europe. They were maybe not as good as the top developers in the US, but their skill level was very close, but their salary was like half or less, right? So what you got versus the cost was such a good ROI relative.
Yeah. So what you're speaking to there, it's really a change in mindset. You shift from, okay, we'll just pay someone on Fiverr or Online Jobs PH to do some easy low admin tasks for $3-4 an hour, to, okay, if we really want to build a successful business, we need to start thinking differently. We need to actually start thinking, okay, how do we attract the best type of talent? Because we know if we do that, then that's going to give us the best chance of hitting the goals based off the plans that we've just gone through.
And exactly, I mean, if we take your angle from sales, right? Like, we've seen the same. We've had people come to us like, how cheap can I hire a sales guy in South Africa?
Wrong question.
You rarely get the best sales guys when you think cheap. But here's the thing. Some of the clients we work with have ended up paying 3-4 grand a month for a sales guy that would cost them 25 in the US, and who absolutely, killing it, right? So the whole point is that, yeah, that's the whole point for me. Like the ability to hire remotely as a business owner, like anything you invest in, like the same when you invest in marketing, the question is not, is it cheap? The question is, what does it take to give us a good ROI, right? Like if you look at ads, LinkedIn ads are really expensive. Like, okay, great, I'll run some. And if I only need to run 10 ads, or if I only need to pay for 10 ads versus 500 on Facebook, those individual 10 ads might be more expensive. But if the total cost is less to acquire a good lead, then that's great for me.
Okay, so now we're clear, right? We've got our foundations right. We're hiring the right functions in the business, and now we're hiring the best people to fulfill those functions, right? So as an agency owner, you're like, okay, I have it all worked out. What would you say is an area that they shouldn't delegate, that they should keep their eyes on?
So the few things you shouldn't delegate as a business owner is the vision, mission, values, hiring the people who work directly for you. Don't hire people down in the organization, but the people who report directly to you, you want to hire. And then doing one-on-ones with all of the people who report to you on a regular basis.
And well, I guess as the more your company grows, the potentially more complicated that could get, right? I've heard the CEO of Coinbase mentioned before. I think at one stage their company was scaling so fast. I think he had like 15 direct reports, and then for him it just became too chaotic. And again, they had to simplify. But
this only happens when you're not thinking of the business the way I've just said. If you think of business as sales, marketing, operation, finance, right? You bring someone in operations. Like, yeah, in the early days, you might have maybe 2 in each department report to you, but very quickly, you want to figure out who is the figurehead in that department. Who is the big dog in sales? Who is the big dog in marketing? And who is the big dog in operations? As a business owner, you do not want to have 50 people report to you. If you have 15 people report to you, go to mattsingers.com, send me a message. Let's do some leadership training.
Before I let you go, Mads, there's two last areas I want to quickly jump in with you. So before, and maybe we should have recorded this at the start, but before we started chatting, we were having a very interesting discussion about AI. And so I'm curious from what you're seeing now, and it sounds like you're integrating AI quite a bit in your business. Can you maybe firstly speak a bit more to that? Like, how are you currently leveraging AI across your companies? Because you have a lot.
Yeah. So my mindset about AI is very simple. AI enables people to do way more in the same amount of time, right? So AI is your ability as an individual to do way more things in the same amount of time. I hear a lot of people say, I'm afraid of my job. And I'm like, well, then you should learn AI, because reality is with AI, you can deliver so much, so fast, so much better, so much more consistent. If you are at the forefront of AI in any field, if you have a good idea of what you're doing and you can deliver a lot of high quality material in whatever it is you're doing, you will never is probably a wrong word, but you will most likely never have issues, right? The people who are hiding right now, like if you're a developer and you're like, oh, I don't want to use AI because it might steal my job. Well, then it will steal your job. If you're a copywriter and you say, oh, copy can't be written by AI, it has to be done by a human, and therefore I don't want to look at AI, well, you're going to lose your job, right? If someone else can do 20x the amount and quality of your work than you're doing right now, everyone will prefer them in front of you, right? AI is an enhancer that can enable you to do more stuff in less time.
So for the agency owner watching this, right? Let's say they're super busy, they know that this AI thing is important, but they just haven't got themselves to really dig into it. where would you say is the low-hanging fruit that they should initially start looking to integrate AI into their business?
Push their teams to do it more. Like literally give people time to do it. Make a competition in your business and say, hey, we want people to come up with ideas and suggestions on what can be automated. The best idea that we end up implementing gets some rewards, right? Like encourage people to think AI, encourage people to use it, encourage people to get better and more comfortable with it.
Perfect. Now, before we wrap up, where can people find you, Mads? Because I'm assuming people listening to this, they're like, okay, he's talking about a lot of really high leverage things that I probably need to execute now. He's talking about 𝐬𝐤𝐴𝑅aMP. He's talking about his recruitment and businesses. He's talking about people. How do they find you? Where's the best place for them to start?
So madsingers.com, or put Mads Singers into any social media. I am still the only human in the world with that name, so that makes it easy. Yeah, we have our 𝐻EYRaMP.com is great. Aristo Sourcing or aristosearch.com are both. So Aristo Search is local recruitment, so wherever you are, and aristosourcing.com is outsourcing. So as I said, predominantly hiring in South Africa, Philippines, and so on.
What's next for you, Mads? You have an event coming up. Can you tell us a bit more about that and who should be coming? Who should be considering?
We only have the best SEO conference in the world coming up. It is in March 10th to 13th in Saigon, Vietnam. And who should be there? Well, everyone should be there. You're obviously missing out if you're not. But generally people who are into online marketing, also a lot of stuff about AI. It's far away, which is why it's so good. People who are coming, it's a mix of people coming from US, Europe, Australia, etc. And the people coming are coming from far away. It's all business owners, it's all high-level people, and therefore you want to be there.
And as someone who was there last year, and I've been to quite a few conferences, I will say that was one of the best conferences I've been to. So if you're looking for an excuse to go to Vietnam and be around some amazing individuals, because Mads has got a great network, I would highly encourage you to check out SEO Mastery in March, next month. Before we close, last question for you, Mads. What would be, if tomorrow was your last day, and hopefully it's not your last day, right? But what would your final piece of advice be to, let's say, an agency owner that wants to scale? If you have to tell them one thing.
Get very clear on what is your repeatable process. What is the one thing you do? Like it's the elevator speech. Someone in an elevator says, what do you do? If it takes you 30 seconds to explain to them what you do, you're doing it wrong, right? If you look at big business, if you look at Coca-Cola, for many years, they sold one drink. If you look at McDonald's, for many years, they executed one simple process, right? Don't do everything for everyone. Find out, and here's the thing, if you are doing that today, look at your client, look at your best 2, 3, 4 clients and look at what do they have in common, right? How can you focus on just people like that?
Mads Singers.
Yeah.
Thank you. Amazing.